Welcome to our week 2, quarter 3 of our subject English 2. So today we are going to talk about the topic differentiating reality from fantasy. So are you ready? Okay. So at the end of the lesson, you are expected to note the details on the selection, listen to, differentiate the concepts of reality from fantasy, and lastly, identify the details in the selection that depict reality and fantasy. All you have to do is to listen to the story that I am going to read. You have to take note of all the important details that you will hear. Is that clear? Okay, the title of the story is Anya's Way. It is written by Cindy de Assis. So one day, Anya went to the woods to help her mother gather vegetables for their lunch. When she was heading back home, she couldn't find her way home. She was lost. Not knowing what to do, she still continued to walk until she reached a crossroad. Where should I go? Right or left? She asked herself. Suddenly, a tiny creature with wings, like a fairy, appeared in front of her. You seem lost, young girl. Answer my question and I will show you the way, said the creature. Anya remembered all the things that her mother taught her. Finally, she returned. She continued to walk until she reached another crossroad. Suddenly, a tiny creature with pointed ears like a dwarf appeared in front of her. You seem lost, young girl. Answer my question and I will show you the way, said the creature. What is your question then? Anya asked. If your friend had done a bad thing, what would you have done? Turn right if you would tell your friend's action to your teacher. Turn left if you will do nothing, said the elf. Again, Anya remembered all the things that her mother taught her. Finally, she turned right. She continued to walk until she reached a new crossroad. Suddenly, a lady in a shiny dress like a goddess appeared in front of her. You seem lost, young girl. Answer my question and I will show you the way, said the lady. What is your question then? Anya asked. If I give you the chance to go to a place that you desire the most, what will you do? Turn right if you will accept it. Turn left if you will turn down the offer and go back to your current life that you have. At this moment, Anya remembered her mother and realized how she really missed her. Finally, she turned left. She walked continuously until she heard a voice shouting her name. She saw her mother running towards her. Anya hugged her mother and told her that she got lost. How did you find your way back? Asked her mother. I just remembered all the right things that you taught me. Doing the right thing will lead you to the right way. Thank you, mother, said Anya as she hugged her mother all over again. Okay, now let's just answer this question regarding the story Anya's Way. For the first question, what is reality in the story? A. Anya went to the forest to help her mother. B. Anya met a fairy in the forest. C. The goddess showed Anya the way back home. If your answer is A, you are right. Okay, for the second question, what is the fantasy in the story? A. A tiny creature with pointed ears like a dwarf appear in front of her. B. Doing the right thing will lead you to the right way. C. Anya went to the woods to help her mother. The fantasy here is letter A. A tiny creature with pointed ears like a dwarf appear in front of her. Okay, so I think you understand the difference between the reality and fantasy. Let's now define more about reality and fantasy for you to be able to understand more about the differences between the two. So reality is real and something that is possible to happen. And also, characters and events in the story portray reality which can be experienced in real life. It can be experienced through the five senses. What are those? See, hear, smell, taste, and touch. While fantasy, it is strange, magical, unreal, and a make-up story. Also, characters and events are make-believe that cannot happen in real life. And lastly, products of our imagination only. So the difference between the two is reality is real and is happening while fantasy is magical and imagination only. Okay, is that clear? Now that you have understood the difference between reality and fantasy, you must remember these steps to easily determine if the story or part of the story you heard is a fantasy or reality. First, you have to listen carefully and attentively. You have to make sure you have a paper and pencil to list down all the important details and events in the story. The second one is take note all the characters and the setting of the story. The third one, write down also the events and situations that happened in the story. You may write it in a phrases or your own words to easily remember the events. And lastly, after hearing the whole story, go back to your notes. Analyze the characters, settings, and events. If all that you have listed portray reality and can be experienced in real life, the story is reality. However, if parts of the story you have listened are strange and just product of our imagination, then that part of the story is a fantasy. Okay, is that clear? For your activity, listen carefully. Draw a heart if the sentence expresses reality and star if the sentence expresses fantasy. Write your answers on a separate sheet of paper. Remember, heart if it expresses reality, then star if the sentence expresses fantasy. Number 1, a house can be built by many people by helping together. Is it heart for reality or star for fantasy? You're right. It is reality, and it can be done in real or in real life. Number 2, a boat can fly. Is it reality or fantasy? Correct. It is fantasy. Boats cannot fly. For the number 3, birds live in a nest. Is it real or is it a fantasy? Very good. It is real or reality. Number 4, the giants sleep on the mountains. Is it reality or fantasy? Very good. It is fantasy. We don't have giants in real life. It is just a part of the old stories. Number 5, the wizard made the car fly. Is it reality or fantasy? Very good. It is a fantasy. No one can make a car fly. It is only driven on the roads. Okay. Now, for your assignment, write one reality and one fantasy sentence about the picture. Write your answers on a separate sheet of paper. This is your assignment. You have to do this at home and you have to take a picture of it and pass it to me. Is that clear? Do you have questions about our lessons? Okay. Thank you for listening and goodbye, class.